We are live, and cue the earlobe nibble. Good afternoon, everyone. This is a short notice live stream because I'm supposed to be on vacation. I don't vacation well, and I don't relax well, and I don't enjoy sitting in hot tubs and doing nothing. So, also, it's a stubborn, stupid thing that I'm insisting on. I have to show a vaccine passport to go downhill skiing in Quebec. Trust the science. We're in Quebec now. They've announced that they're going to eliminate the vaccine passport system as of March 14. But until then, the science says you need to show a vaccine passport to go downhill skiing. I guess because you could be too close to someone on the chairlift who you don't know, and that's the science. So I have been stubbornly refusing to go downhill skiing. Luckily, the kids don't have to show that stuff yet. And I went cross-country skiing today because the science for cross-country skiing is different. I posted the picture on Twitter. You only needed to show your vaccine passport if you wanted to sit down at a table in the shack at the cross-country ski location. Okay, are you ready to go on the ground? How is the audio and how is the video? It's not my studio. It's not my good mic. It's not my good camera. So we're gonna make do. And the house is quiet because the kids are still out skiing, and I want to do this stream because there's a lot of stuff that we have to catch up on. And we'll start with we'll start with a few stories. Like, we know what's going on in the world. The world seems to be on fire, and not like the hair of fire. It just seems to be on fire, and it moves not just quickly. It moves too quickly for people to actually appreciate what's going on. Isn't Pat King like an actual full-blown white supremacist? Well, even if he were, would that justify continued detention on mischief charges? Let's talk about what we have on the menu. I mean, my Twitter feed has become my running diary of subject matter and my running diary of thoughts, reflection, reactions, and ultimately discussion subject for when we go live. I'm not on the John again. I'm not on the John. Now there's a nice little piece of artwork behind me. I'm not on the John. This one was done. I had time to set up, and it's quiet enough in this place where we're staying that I could do this one outside of John. How do so many reporters know Putin's thinking? We're gonna get to that. So, Canada. Oh, geez, the children are back. Canada. We're gonna have to talk Russia, and not in any policy decisions. Wait, no. Yep, there you go, upstairs. Not policy decisions, just the madness of social media warfare, and it's something outrageous. And then they're debating this bill now, S233, universal basic income in Canada. So, with that said, people, let me see what I got here. Let me see. I'm going to read some of the chat as we. Why am I emphasizing the H? Why wouldn't I? It's a Family Guy joke that has become. Pat King does not have more than mischief charges, though. So his 4 charges are mischief, unless I've made a mistake. Mischief or inciting mischief. He does not have. Although I think he. Let's start with the Pat King story. The story that was international headlines for a month, and now it's just been pushed out of the international headlines, and the government that got embarrassed, disgraced, desecrated our Constitution, they get to shift the limelight now away from them and onto Russia. Convenient and obvious and apparent. But setting that aside, you all know what's been going on in Canada. We had 3 weeks of the most peaceful protest you can possibly imagine. The Truckers' Convoy. They've called it the Freedom Convoy 2022. I don't want to go over all of it, but the Freedom Convoy it started gaining momentum, pun intended, about a month ago. Canadian liberal government subsidized media was ignoring the existence of this convoy, then downplaying the existence of the convoy, saying it was a a local thing in British Columbia about road conditions. Then they had to acknowledge that there were thousands of trucks on their way to Ottawa. Then they had to demonize the Freedom Convoy to say that it's a white supremacist, violent, extremist protest that's going to overthrow the government. The truckers parked their trucks, and people within the convoy parked their cars on Ottawa, Parliament Hill, Wellington Street, for I think it was 3 weeks before Supreme Leader Justin Trudeau brought in the cavalry. No pun intended. 3 weeks they were parked on Parliament Hill on Wellington Street. For the first 4 days, they were honking their horns quite a lot. Some say throughout the night, others say no. I asked people and got mixed answers on the street. There was a lawsuit, class action lawsuit filed. They got an injunction. They initially sought, break up the whole protest. They initially sought everything under the sun. The only thing they got in the injunction was to stop honking the horns. And the judge, in the judge's judgment, said, you respect this order and you continue peaceful protest, and this is a lawful peaceful protest. You're within your rights to do it. I tweeted the highlighted section from that injunction on the social medias. 3 weeks this went on. I said from the beginning, the government of Canada wanted nothing more than this to devolve into what the media spun as being the January 6 events. And I've been covering the January 6 events from the beginning. Whether or not that entire protest could be characterized by the acts of violence that we did witness, there were nonetheless acts of violence at the January 6 protests, riots, whatever you want to call them. I think we can all agree it wasn't an insurrection, but there were incidents, there were confrontations. Whether or not it defined the entire protest, whether or not the violent protests define people, being allowed into Capitol Hill, grannies taking selfies, and whatever. Our government wanted nothing more than an incident like that to occur on Parliament Hill with this convoy, and no such incident occurred. It went on for 3 weeks where, they were alleging it was causing traffic. They were alleging it was causing an inconvenience. And, if it wasn't, it might have caused some inconvenience because, 3 streets in Parliament Hill, downtown Ottawa, were blocked off. But there were still lanes for emergency traffic, for you could walk the streets, yada, yada, yada. The government wanted nothing more than that to devolve into a January 6th, and it didn't. And when it didn't, Supreme Leader Justin Trudeau had to pretend that it had nonetheless declared or invoked the Emergencies Act, which is the predecessor, not the predecessor. Which one comes after? Which one comes after? You got predecessor, and then you got the superseder. While I think of my words, our own Pravda spins a web of lies. Stay in your homes and fear for your lives. You know who they're paid by, so don't be naive. Think about that. Think about what they lead you to believe. That's pretty good. It's not terrible. What was I just about to say? Whatever comes after. The Emergencies Act followed the War Measures Act. The War Measures Act had existed for 100 years beforehand. The Emergencies Act replaced that. So it had the same spirit. You invoke the Emergencies Act when there's a national emergency, as per the law, a national emergency for which the provinces lack the resources to deal with. So, imagine natural disasters that a province can't deal with. It needs the Fed. An attack on the democracy, an attack on the body politic, as per the law. This protest, which had lasted a long time and was very annoying, and was very annoying politically because it started spawning off like its own convoy movements across the world. Canada became the epicenter. It became the focal point for the fight for freedom. And it was embarrassing the government. There's no doubt about it. 3 weeks into this, when, the Ottawa Council's biggest problem with this protest was that kids were on bouncy castles on Wellington Street and there were hot tubs. That was the Ottawa Council's biggest issue with this. Trudeau says it's a good time to declare this a national emergency to warrant invoking the Emergencies Act. Thank you very much, Janet Partridge. Justin Trudeau decides now's the time to invoke the Emergencies Act 3 weeks into this protest. There were some blockadings of, call it trade routes on the border in Coutts, Alberta, the Ambassador Bridge going from Windsor to Michigan. The Ambassador Bridge blockade had come to an end by the time the Emergencies Act was invoked, but the protest in Ottawa was still going on. Oh, this is a long-winded way of getting to where I was going. So they declared the Emergencies Act, and it was a national embarrassment. And I think it was an international embarrassment. I mean, I've been giving Fox News a hard time these days because I think they still deserve to get a hard time. They're a little bit better, but not much. Not flawless. A little bit better than alternative CNN. Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act. The whole procedure, we've gone over this time and time again. You invoke the Emergencies Act. It has to get ratified by both the House of Commons and the Senate in order for it to be declared lawful, the directives that you want to implement to put into effect. Before Parliament could vote on it, Justin Trudeau starts implementing the directives that he intended to impose under his declaration of the Emergencies Act. They erect fences, they make it look so violent in Ottawa that they made it look so violent that they had to suspend the debate on the Emergencies Act on the Friday of, because out of control. Winston, get over here. Because it was out of control. Then they spend 2 days debating it before the House of Commons. Liberals approve it. The NDP approve it. Conservatives and the Bloc vote against it by and large. But it passes with a vote of 185 to 151 in the House of Commons. Then there's another 2 days of debate before the Senate. The Senate are not elected officials in Canada. They are appointed. And I think 52 of the 105 senators were appointed by Justin Trudeau, from what I understand. I might be wrong. But before the Senate can vote on it, after Justin Trudeau's already implemented it, he brought in the police to break up this protest, to literally go in and crush it, to tear gas, pepper spray, batons, concussive grenades. I was there. I saw a lot of it myself, and I know that the rest occurred. They do that. Chrystia Freeland announces that they're freezing bank accounts of organizers and of people who parked their cars on Wellington. They froze 206 bank accounts. They've since been unfrozen. But they froze bank accounts in the absence of a court order while promising to immunize the banks from having frozen the bank accounts. And they broke up this peaceful protest with what can only be described as actual outright violence. I had not seen any violence. What are you eating? Don't eat that. Sorry. I had not seen any violence at that protest until the police showed up. Froze bank accounts, successor. Thank you, successor. I didn't see a lick of violence at that protest, and I documented, live streamed to show the world what was going on. 14 days, 13 days, 40 plus hours. I didn't see a shred of violence until the cops showed up, literally in riot gear, with batons, with armored vehicles, snipers on roofs. So Justin Trudeau comes up and breaks up the most peaceful Bloc Party protest you've ever seen, freezes bank accounts, which caused a lot of people in Canada, and I guess abroad, to panic a little bit. Holy crab apples, do we live in a banana republic where the government can say to the banks, freeze bank accounts of what are ostensibly our political adversaries? No due process, despite the fact that Trudeau said he'd respect the Charter of Rights while invoking the Emergencies Act. No due process, and we're going to immunize the banks. So some people said that caused something of a run on the banks. There were rumors, there were stories of people trying to withdraw money from the banks. Their banks saying, sorry, we don't have all of that money on reserve. Come back in a few days. Okay. Zeterish, I respect your opinion, but I'll trust my own assessment when it comes to Barnes, but everyone's entitled to their opinion. It arguably caused a run on the banks, which some people hypothesized, then turned around and said, Trudeau, what you're doing is destroying this country. You're destroying trust in the financial institutions. You're causing a run on the banks, and we can't handle it. And then before the Senate could either ratify or reject the declaration of the Emergencies Act, Justin Trudeau rescinds it. Okay, that's what gets us all to here now. When they declared the Emergencies Act, and they brought the police in literally to bust up the protest. I'm going to read this. I live in Ottawa, and downtown has been a ghost town for 2 years. It's virtually all government buildings, and they were working from home. Ottawans forgot downtowns of national capitals are typically busy and loud. I can't vet this, but the CA, the Canadian Super Chat dollars, indicates it is from Canada. So that's where we're at. When Trudeau came in with his fists of fury to bust up, You guys can read this one while I talk. When Trudeau came in with his fists of fury to bust up the kids playing on bouncy castles, hot tubs on Wellington, they arrested a bunch of the organizers of the convoy. They arrested Tamara Lich, who, from what I understand, is Métis or part Métis, although I think Métis necessarily means part not Indigenous, but I believe she's Métis. They arrested Tamara Lich. They arrested Pat King. They arrested other people who were organizers of the convoy, although there is argument as to who is the organizer, who is the I want to say the organizer, but rather who is the speaker, who represents this convoy, which by and large was an organic grassroots movement. Some people think that Pat King was not an organizer. Some people think that he co-opted onto this. Irrelevant. They arrested Tamara Lich. They arrested Pat King. See what charges. I want to make sure. I'm pretty sure Pat King was only arrested on misdemeanor and incitement of misdemeanor. They arrested a bunch of others. What was his name? Not Ben. Someone can remind me of the third organizer who they arrested. They arrested them and detained them. And not just detained them, they're still being detained. Tamara Lich and Pat King, who were arrested on, it's either mischief charges, incitement to mischief, conspiracy to commit mischief. Pat King has 4 charges, and Tamara Lich has 3, I think. They're still being detained. They're still being detained, and someone says, someone's watching and says Daniel Bulford was also arrested. Either way, they arrested organizers, people who were the spokespeople for this convoy. They froze their bank accounts. I did an interview with Tom Marazzo last week, who wasn't even an organizer, but became a volunteer or a participant in the protest. They froze his bank accounts for over a week. They went after his wife's credit rating on the basis of fraudulent charges on a credit card, whatever. Pat King, love him or hate him, Tamara Lich, love her or hate her, are still being detained, arrested. It was a week ago last Friday. And I've got to share. I'm going to go see if I can share the first story. Let me scroll to the bottom of the chat just so I can keep up with this in as much as possible. I'm freezing off and on. The internet here is not particularly good, so my apologies if it is going in and out of connectivity. Charged with mischief. Okay, let me bring up the share screen. Share screen, Chrome tab. I opened up all of my things here. Let's just see what this looks like, if it's a good layout. Now I got to find StreamYard again. All right, looks good. Nice. Let me go to that so I can read it. Dislike Pat King as much as you want, but continued pretrial detention of someone accused of mischief is not how the judicial system in a civilized country works, despite what the Justice of the Peace asserts. This is an outrage and a disgrace. Justin Trudeau and David Lametti is our Minister of Justice. This is what the judge said. This is coming from an article. I'll pull up the article in a second, but this is what the judge said, because Pat King's lawyer apparently raised arguments that Pat King is afraid of getting COVID in the crowded detention facilities and they should release him pending his trial. Also said that I think they tried to raise the argument that Pat King is also part Indigenous because there's exemptions for arrest. There's exemptions for prohibitions on protest if you are Indigenous, which is why some people were saying, how are they holding Tamara Lich in pretrial detention if there's an exception for Indigenous for protests? I wanted to look into the history to that. I don't know enough about it, so I won't venture more than that. But this is what the judge, who is justifying the continued pretrial detention of Pat King on mischief charges, said. Counsel for King further argued that detention for purposes of maintaining confidence in the administration of justice should not be considered given the potential for Mr. King to serve a lengthier sentence awaiting trial than he would receive should he be found guilty. Instead, Justice Seymour ruled the opposite, that releasing King would itself cause the court to be disrespected. A reasonable person, properly informed, will lose confidence in the administration of justice should Mr. King be released. That is what the justice of the peace said. And we looked this up previously. Justices of the peace. From what I understand, they're not judges who have to serve, who have to be lawyers for 10 years in order to be appointed. They are sort of lower down judges that can be appointed and don't have to have that scrutiny, that degree of scrutiny met, as far as I understand. That's what the justice of the peace said. I'm going to pull up the article. Yeah, I won't read this, but yes, all that to say, other people who have committed much more serious crimes were released on bail, because we've discussed this, plenty of times before. They undertake to adhere. I mean, the thing is this: I had raised this argument earlier that they undertake to respect their bail terms or bail conditions, their terms of release, whereas in the case of that pastor James Coates, who refused to sign off on the undertaking, said, I can't agree to this. Therefore, they continued to detain him. Tamara Litch, from what I understand, one of them had found a surety to guarantee $50,000 that they would respect their terms of release. So it's not even that they said, dog finds everything on the ground to eat. It's not even the case that in Tamara Litch and Pat King's cases, they were defiant. This my understanding now is they were not like overtly defiant. F you, I'm going to go do what I want regardless. They were agreeing to respect the terms of their release. And someone in the chat who might know, one of the two of them found a surety to post basically a $50,000 guarantee that they would respect the terms of their release. Whereas if they didn't, that surety would be appropriated by the court, and then they would be rearrested and probably justifiably detained. So that's what the judge said. But let me pull up the article so we can just walk through this, because it's a story that I don't care what anyone thinks of Pat King. It's not the way anything can work in a free and democratic society, in my humble opinion. And maybe people disagree with that. Let me just make sure I'm neurotic. I want to make sure that, okay, good. We're going to talk strategy here. I cannot vet for this article. So this article may not be 1,000% accurate. I don't know what SOO today is. Someone might want to help me with this. But apparently, Pat King's lawyer raised COVID concerns to argue for a pre-trial release. And I'll tell you, Pat King, the former Saltite fighting against COVID restrictions, has a new concern. Speaking on behalf of his client at last week's unsuccessful bail application, King's lawyer, Cal Roseman, revealed worries the self-declared, quote, investigative journalist, end quote, that's force of habit, and Convoy organizer, I'm not sure that he's an organizer, but whatever, doesn't really matter, might catch COVID during what could well be an extended stay behind bars. Denied bail on Friday, King must now await trial in jail cell on charges of mischief, counseling to commit mischief, counseling to disobey a court order, and counseling to obstruct police. So those are the 4 charges. So I was not wrong, not a question of being wrong. Those are the 4 charges. And let's just skip to what the judge said. Andrew Seymour, get out of here. Andrew Seymour, the presiding justice of the peace at King's bail hearing, didn't buy Rosemond's argument and perceived a bit of situational irony. After I close this down, I'm going to talk about the strategic mistake of having made this argument, if the lawyer actually made it. It's somewhat ironic that an individual whose raison d'etre is to protest vehemently against public health measures designed to reduce the spread of COVID would now suggest that the delay or the potential for being infected at a detention center could impact the court's decision on bail. I put little weight on the submission. Anybody who's been a lawyer, you know that's nauseating verbiage, because basically what they're saying is, you've made your arguments. I've heard both sides. I put little weight on your arguments. You have been rejected by the court. Counsel for Mr. King further argued that detention for the purposes of maintaining confidence in the administration should not be considered given the potential for Mr. King to serve a lengthier sentence awaiting trial. We already talked about this. And then we get into the Indigenous part. A reasonable person properly informed will lose confidence in the administration of justice should Mr. King be released. It's Kafka, people. It's Kafkaesque that the court itself could say releasing. So remember, everybody, pretrial detention is detention of an individual who, legally speaking, is innocent. They have not been found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law, and the reasons for which pretrial detention is justified, flight risk, risk of repeat offense, and danger to society, ensuring that you show up for your trial date. I mean, these are criteria that need to be met in order to justify what is, in fact, detention of a legally innocent person. He might be found guilty on the merits, but until that time, until he is found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law, that is pretrial detention of an innocent person. And what's this person's charge? We saw it. Mischief, counseling to obstruct, yada, yada. And he could be held in jail on pretrial detention for longer than might be his conviction. But this judge says, no, people will lose faith in the system if I release this accused. Compare that to other accused who've been released. So I say this is Kafkaesque, Orwellian. Flip it around. Change the definition of words. Change the essence of the legal system. You're an accused, innocent until proven guilty, now being detained until trial because this judge, this justice of the peace, says if I release him, people will have, it'll bring the administration of justice into disrepute. And that person believes what he wrote, presumably. Just got out of the shower. Thank you, Cameron. How you doing? So, top 5 infamous rapper in Toronto was arrested, charged, put on house arrest after being charged with murder. Openly brags about. Yep. No. It's for anyone to pretend this is not political. I won't say they're lying. I won't say they're working for the government or whatever. They're lacking perspective. I would say naive, to give them the benefit of the doubt. This is purely political. It's obscene. It's absolutely obscene. Now, that being said, strategic mistake by King's lawyer. If King's lawyer did in fact say he's afraid of catching COVID, it's bad for optics. It's bad for arguments, and it's sucking and blowing. Winston, get over here. It's sucking and blowing, legally speaking, because King has been openly defiant. And to raise that argument, even if it might be legally tenable, you're not going to get the sympathy of the court. So you may as well do it. Winston, get over here. Bad argument. And then they tried to argue that he was Indigenous as well, and they basically said there's no evidence. There's absolutely evidence. So that's the Pat King update. It's atrocious. Get over here, please. Stop. Okay. It's atrocious. It should not be tolerated. And even if you hate the protesters, even if you hate the convoy, no freedom-loving, justice-loving person can possibly think this is anything less than an outrage. In the early stages when I didn't have very many facts, and I said, thought experiment, what could Pat King and Tamara Litch have possibly said or done that could justify this? And I said, okay, hypothetically, they get up in court, middle fingers to the judge, say, whatever you do, I'm going to get right back out there and do what I want. Okay, I could conceivably understand that, although my argument would still be, let him out, let him do it. It's mischief. It's not murder. It's not, it's not arson. It's not trafficking. Let him out, let him do it, and then you're morally justified in denying bail the second time. But that's not even the case. Apparently, there were terms of release that were proposed that were, as far as I'm concerned, quite onerous. And from the word I have inside, from other lawyers who've been there, who do criminal law, they found them to be more onerous than anything they've ever seen for drug dealers, accused assault, whatever. They were more onerous than actual violent criminals, and the court still did not grant it. So it's someone said revenge court. You have the Barnes had always argued that, you can't have the judges in DC adjudicating on the insurrection, because if it was an attack on the administration itself, then the judges who are doling out justice or injustice were the victims of that attack, and therefore they can't adjudicate in a case in which they were the actual alleged victims. Same thing here. This was supposed to be an insurrection, and it was painted as that. It was painted as all sorts of bad words. And now you're going to have that justice system, those justices of the peace in that jurisdiction, doling out justice or injustice on participants. Can't happen. Cassidy the Carpenter says their argument for not releasing King is having the opposite effect. The longer he is detained, the less confidence I have in our judicial system, as should anybody else. It's not because that justice of the peace flipped the script, so to speak. Oh, if I let him go, if I let this man go on charges of mischief, no one's going to trust the judicial system. Wait until there's another protest and they start arresting other protesters of other demographics. Imagine detaining anybody on a non-violent mischief charge. Oh, I'm sorry. And counseling to commit mischief. Just imagine that under any other circumstances. And you would be rightly egreged, and you should be egreged under these circumstances. And if you're not, it's probably only because the politics of the situation has gotten in the way. So that's Pat King. And I don't want to get into all the other stuff. Pat King has been quite, the irony is Pat King's been vocal and has said other things which might be worse than what he's actually been arrested for and charged with now. But you can't. And the other thing is, if you want to invoke his past bad behavior, you can't really do that just yet because he's not facing criminal charges on anything else at this time other than the mischief and those 3 other charges. It's an outrage. Tamara Lich has been in jail now for going to be 2 weeks this Friday on mischief. The Canadian government needs to free everyone involved. That's it. Well, free them. They don't need to free them. Let them out. They'll have their day in court, and they'll be found guilty or innocent guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, or innocent. They won't be found innocent. They will be found not guilty. Let them out. They will come back for their trials. And by the way, if you're nervous about them not coming back for their trials, where do you think these people are going? They parked their butts on Ottawa for 3 weeks. They're fighting for the country. They're not fleeing the country. And if your concern is them fleeing, there are ways to get around that while releasing them pre-trial. The Canadian government needs to free everyone involved. That said, reminder that the code Viva at checkout is 20% off the legal. Oh, I forgot to give the disclaimer. No legal advice. No undermining election advice. YouTube takes 30% of super chats. If you don't like that, don't give the super chat. You can go support us at Rumble, where we are simultaneously streaming. Rumble takes 20% of their equivalent Rumble rants. If I don't bring up your super chat, it's going to make you angry. Don't give it. I don't like people feeling miffed, rooked. I appreciate all the support. I thank you very much for it. It allows me to do this. But if you're going to be egreged, if I do not bring up your super chat, don't give the super chat. I don't like people feeling bad. Don't forget about Artur Pawlowski is still in jail. Yeah, no, Artur Pawlowski was rearrested. I presume they're arguing that. I haven't followed up on that story. I should. Pawlowski was detained. He had these bail conditions which were obscene. For those of you who don't know, I did a bunch of vlogs on it at the time. His terms of release, the judge compelled him to say certain things while speaking out against COVID restrictions. The judge said, while you are exercising your free speech, you must say the following, and it was in the judgment. You must say this: while I disagree with public health guidelines, science is and I won't get into it. And I guess he violated his terms of release, and they locked him back up. Pastor James Coates, they locked him up for 3 weeks because he refused to sign off on the terms of bail, which were to not hold church service. They don't care. USA every day, bad government. Since the Emergency Act was never ratified, does that mean the cops lose their qualified immunity? David King, subject to error. No, I don't think it has any impact on the qualified immunity of the police, which was not the qualified immunity of police that didn't exist under the invocation of the Emergencies Act. That just exists. Where I do question as to whether or not immunity was ever bestowed is on the banks, because their immunity was never ratified under the directives, which themselves were never ratified because the Senate never voted on it. So Trudeau rescinded the invocation of the Emergencies Act before it could get ratified or rejected, which I would argue means that the immunity that he promised to the banks for freezing these bank accounts never formalized. I have no interest to sue. I have no interest to sue, but the affected parties can probably sue the banks, and they might try to argue immunity because the government promised it, but it was never ratified, and I don't think they ever got it. So, to be seen. April Beauclair cut two of my friends. Oh, I don't want to read this out. I don't know who that is. Yep, selective justice. We can agree on that. Yeah, what's up? The door's open, but just don't make noise when you come in, please. I'm live now in the interwebs. We need more. Thank you very much. And then I noticed a new member. Welcome, Joni Baloney. And then I noticed a red super chat, which I'm going to get to. All right, here we go. RVDL, the crooked old man full of plots and schemes would reset all our lives and destroy our dreams. His puppets twist our laws, what they're supposed to mean. Call me crazy if you want. I've read his own words, only 18 wheels to fly. Thank you very much. Oh, that's a brain. That's a left and right brain now in the avatar. I see that. All right, so that's Pat King. Pat, and it's obscene. That's Pat King, Tamara Lich, and like, it's amazing what a world it would be if there were actually, people who were in pursuit of justice, even for parties that they don't like. That's the way it should be. Excessive bail should not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted. Can no bail at all be considered excessive bail? Oops, wrong. I was going to say that's the U.S. Constitution. We have the same rights in our Canadian Charter of Rights. Basically, our Charter of Rights, it's very analogous to the United States Constitution, except for that one little in fine part in the beginning. This Charter of Rights guarantees your rights, except in as much as they can be violated by law duly passed in accordance with the rules of a free and democratic society. You have your rights with a big asterisk. A big asterisk. Okay. Okay, I have to maybe go close that door. Yeah, so now U.S. trucker and it spawned movements everywhere. They were protesting in Italy, Poland, across Europe. Close the door as you go, please. Everywhere, and now it's in the States, and they want to. My concern is, like in Canada, we don't have. My experience, at least, is we don't have the agent provocateur phenomenon quite as seriously as you do in the States. You guys seem to have it down to a science in the United States, and I've seen it now with the January 6th. I've seen it with a bunch of stuff. I've seen how it works, and it's like it's a science in the United States. And here, my goodness, 3 weeks and literally not one broken window caused by the convoy. I asked a police officer, but my concern is that that's going to occur in the United States because, I mean, we saw people don't like take on January 6th because I do recognize that there were acts of violence, whether or not it characterizes the entire thing. But I've been following it, and what is quite clear is that there were arguably some individuals who seem to have been instigating the violence that occurred, who, for whatever the reason, are the only ones that never got charged. You know who I'm talking about. The chat will bring up his name. What's up, sir? You're going to want to go through the upstairs.
Why?
Because I'm doing something live right now.
Well, can I just go like that and then that?
No, because if a bunch of kids start doing that, then it's going to be distracting.
Okay.
Stairs.
But are you still streaming?
I am still streaming right now, sir. Okay, close the door and see.
Hi,
Okay, see you soon.
Hi.
So January 6th detainees are still jail. It's obscene. Some of them were denied medical treatment. One of them apparently, for whatever reason, broke his hand in jail, denied medical treatment without being charged as well. Serious miscarriage of justice for what at best will be misdemeanor charge. Trespass, I believe, were the charges for many of them. No insurrection. Oh, they got their conspiracy to commit sedition from what's his name? I'm going to forget his name, but I'm going to forget his name. Rhodes. But now I forget the name of the organization for which he worked. So I mean, that's it. It was Canada's January 6th, except not from the perspective of the protest, rather from the perspective of weaponizing the judicial system, the prosecutorial system, the court system, the political system, to go after the participants as though they were the worst criminals on earth. Rhodes from what's the organization that he works with? When a well-packaged web of lies has been gradually sold to the masses, the truth will seem utterly preposterous and its speaker a raving lunatic. I can tell you that I'm getting that much these days, and that'll segue us into the Russia stuff. Which is, I cannot believe the amount of misinformation that we're seeing on social media. It's like we'll get there. Have you heard about the coming increase of interest rates as high as 30%? What would this do to homeowners who renew it after 5 years? No, the interest rates cannot be as they will never be as high as 30%. But they are talking about increasing interest rates, which is going to have an impact. I don't know what impact that would have on property value. Would it drive it up or would it drive it down? If this is where I've never been the best at economics, but increasing the interest rates, even let's just say excessively, but not to 30%, that's preposterous, I think. What effect does that have on property value? Yeah, no, but here we still have until March 14. So I've come to the most beautiful place to go downhill skiing, and I'm stubbornly just not doing it. But on March 14, 2 weeks from now, it'll be fine. By the way, the $50,000 CERTI was for Pat King. Thank you very much, David. You know who you are for watching and giving me info in real time. The misinformation stuff. Let me just see what will be the next story that I'll pull up. But if anybody, I don't know if everybody likes this format. I don't have time to go to the car and do a vlog edit, but I think I like this format better anyhow, because what I do, we'll talk subject matter as it goes along, and then I'm going to clip it and post the clips on Viva Clips, which is the secondary channel now that I have. And I don't have to edit. Now I can waste so much more time looking into information as opposed to 3 hours editing videos. Have you been threatened? No, I haven't been threatened, but I mean, it's like what they did warrant is that it would only be people who donated after the Emergencies Act was invoked, and it would only be organizers and participants. But then, during the grilling of the debate, they admitted that the wording wasn't so clear. The small print wasn't so clear. Ooh, chest pain. Matthew Perna, a man involved in January 6th, took his life after the... I did hear about that. That's just it killed the process. A trucker convoy is so huge that Biden might have to cancel State of the Union address. No way. Biden is not canceling the State of the Union address. By the way, before I move on to the next subject, I got to bring this up. Speaking of demonizing the convoy and also this idiotic debate process that we had. Let me see where it is. Envoy. Oh, here we go. Ottawa convoy protesters. You got it. You won't believe this, people. You won't believe this. During the debates on why the Emergencies Act was necessary, I forget. I don't know exactly what this was about. Hold on. They said basically that some of the convoy had threatened to do bad things to women. StreamYard is this? Oh, sorry. Okay, we're good. So listen to this. Ottawa convoy protester uttered threats of bad word. Mark Mendes, he is a deputy, so he's an MP, public security. This is a very bold and new accusation, but it's very easy to verify. Which convoy protesters have been charged with uttering threats of that? Do tell. But listen to this. I couldn't understand the dynamic of what was going on in this question because it sounded like the person was giving this guy a hard time as to why they invoked the Emergencies Act. And then when I saw that the person asking the question was a Liberal candidate, then I was like, oh, it all makes sense because this is the circle vortex of, you'll see here, listen to this.
I just don't understand how you could be saying on one hand, there's all these strong ties, this is a national emergency for public safety, and I walk every day by these protests. It just doesn't really add up at all.
So she's saying, you invoked the Emergency Act because it was so dangerous and so risky and such a threat. But meanwhile, I, as an MP, was walking to and from every day, and I didn't notice anything. And when I heard that question, I thought maybe she was conservative. I don't actually know if she was for or against, but it sounded like she was making fun of him for it was so safe. I walked. Why? How could you justify this as a national emergency? But you'll see where it goes.
Minister, sorry, just 10 seconds. Minister.
Well, I would say first, it's not an insinuation. We got the advice from our law enforcement that we met the threshold. And secondly, respectfully, Ms. Gansho, there were Ottawans who were subjected to intimidation, harassment, threats of rape. I mean, and those were all supported by.
How could we have possibly been allowed to walk by that every day?
It is. This is like the theater. This is the theater of the insanity of politics. Like Oh, Echo can't understand. Oh, I put. Oops. Shut your speaker. Okay. Let me try that again. I closed it down. I'm sorry, guys. You'll have. Okay. Bottom line, she says, "How could you have let us go there? You know, if it was such an emergency, we were walking through the convoy every day." And then the guy, Mendiso, says, "We got the advice from our law enforcement that we had met the threshold," as if it's the police force now that says when there's a threshold having been met for declaring the national emergency under the Emergencies Act. And she says, "Well, I can't believe you put us at risk like that." And this is like this is, yeah, go, sorry guys, I screwed up and I shut the window down, so I don't want to pull it up now. It's like, it wasn't, initially it sounded like the argument was there was no emergency, so why'd you declare it? And then, because she basically says, I walked it every day. I didn't feel at risk. No one was threatening me. I didn't feel threatened or anything. And then he says, oh no, but there was. We had, the law enforcement told us, and we had people uttering threats of bad stuff. And then she, instead of saying, well, no, I mean, I lived it. There was no threat. She's like, I can't believe you put us at risk like that. You should have invoked it even harder. You should have put down even more measures. How could you put us at risk? Hey, here's an idea. If you were walking to and from your office through the convoy day in and day out for 3 weeks, maybe there wasn't any risk whatsoever. Certainly not a risk to declare a national emergency and invoke the Emergencies Act. Maybe. So, okay, so that was that. Now talking about misinformation. Let's just pull up another screen here. I have all my notes in the backdrop. Well, we're debating the public, not the universal income. Let's pull that up here. Debating universal basic income, UBI. And then this is the bill supported. Whereas every person should have access to a livable basic income, the minister must develop a national framework for the implementation of guaranteed livable basic income program throughout Canada. And then listen to the terms of this. This is obviously the pro petition in support of. So it'll give you their guidelines or their baseline of what it will do, and they think these are good things. And then the question is going to be, obviously, if this passes, is this good or is this just how hyperinflation occurs? Again, I'm not an economist. I know what I think I understand, but I understand what I don't even know. On December 16, 2021, members of Parliament Leah Gazan introduced Bill C-223, which, if passed, would establish the first national framework for a guaranteed livable basic income for all persons over 17 across Canada. Listen to this. Key features: any person over 17, including temporary workers, permanent residents, and refugee claimants. Create national standards for health and social supports, which I thought we already had with universal health care, that complement a guaranteed basic income program. Determine what constitutes a livable basic income for each region of Canada to ensure that participation in education, training, or the labor force is not required. To ensure that participation in education, training, or the labor force market is not required. I'm not sure I understand what that means. Does not result in a decrease in services or benefits meant to meet an individual's exceptional needs related to health or disability. What would it do? It would require the Minister of Finance within 1 year to create a Canada-wide framework for the implementation of a guaranteed livable basic income. Simply put, this means that the federal government would need to put together the standards and plan from which it, along with other levels of government, could create basic incomes in their jurisdiction. They're debating this right now. And, there's, let me bring up my window here. There are some serious questions as to what the implication of this would be. Different provinces, different basic income for everyone over 17, refugees. I mean, it's we already have universal health care, and we're seeing the problems that exist within the universal health care system. Hospitals on backlog, an infrastructure so weak that when a pandemic comes, the universal healthcare system is so overrun already. They need to start locking people in their homes. And I know, I'm seeing in the chat, and I know what people are thinking about when they hear this. I mean, I know what they're thinking. It rhymes with schmeset and schmommunism. Okay, that's from Knocked Up. That's the old joke from Knocked Up. But it is, you know, I had someone try to explain the difference, but you know, that universal basic income is different than unemployment insurance or employment insurance. I don't see how. The argument was that it's meant to increase with the cost of living. Universal basic income, as opposed to just a job for everyone who can work, and those who can't work have their basic needs met. So that's the question. Have you heard of Kafkaesque, ruled by the worst among us? I have not heard of that. Taxing the hell out of the middle class. So I mean, that's what's going on in Canada on that. Yeah, well, and this is the other part that people are talking about. Ron Paul has his thoughts about what universal basic income leads to. The only issue, okay, where does that come from? These are my questions. I don't have the answers. Where does that money come from? Because it comes from one of two places: taxes or printing cash. The state gets that money from citizens, or it creates that money out of thin air. There's only so much you can tax people before they leave. In which case, where do you get it from there? Tax people more, or print it up. And if the government prints money any more than they've been printing it now, that's how you get serious inflation problems. You are super cute and smart, but as a resident of downtown Ottawa, I have to disagree with some of your points. Why is my freedom less important than some of the protesters? Mirka Durson, I don't think it is. I don't think anybody, this is an issue where freedoms are colliding. There are arguments, by the way, that I'm not sure that I buy fully into them, but that when you live in the capital city, which has certain benefits of being a capital city of a nation, you know, clean, in theory. Ottawa was not always that clean. Good police, good services. It's a government town. When you live in the capital, you're going to have to periodically experience some of the inconveniences that go along with living in the capital, and that is protesting the government who's stationed there. Now, as for why your freedoms should be less important, no one's saying that whatsoever. There is an issue as to when people protest, there's inconveniences that are caused. You know, the question is, the noise was a big problem. The protesters, the convoy agreed to stop honking their horns even before the injunction. But after that, I mean, the question would be, what freedoms did you not have as a result of the convoy versus, you know, what freedoms the government itself has just been systematically taken away from Canadians over the last 2 years. Viva, the U.S. truck convoy is stopping in my small town in Wyoming on Thursday. My farm borders the highway. Would you like me to send you drone footage? Well, I would not advise you to fly a drone over an event, because I don't know what the drone laws are in your country or your jurisdiction, because they're jurisdictional. But man, if you get footage, post it on the interwebs. People are going to want to see what's going on. I suspect we're going to have the same misinformation about the U.S. convoy that we had about the Canadian convoy. That didn't happen, Viva. Watch your own videos. I don't know what that didn't happen. The stopping of the honking of the horns during the night. I was told it stopped, and it did stop when I was there the night of Friday a couple weeks ago. They were definitely honking during the day, but you walked 3 blocks out of Wellington downtown. You didn't hear the honking. It's okay. But now, so to the previous super chat, get the footage, not drone footage, legally acquired footage, so that people can know what's going on, because there's going to be a serious... Close the door on your way out. There's going to be... Okay, fine. Forget it. There's going to be a serious amount of misinformation going on there. And now on the subject of misinformation, the situation in Russia and the Ukraine. I mean, it can only be described as a social media frenzy. The misinformation that is going around, I won't say shocking. It's outrageous. I guess that's another word for shocking. It's outrageous, the amount of misinformation that was going on, and like just the idea of not taking a position that is consistent with the mainstream media narrative. The idea of, it's not even who's going to take a pro Putin position in all of this. And my humble opinion is that all politicians are fundamentally corrupt. I mean, all of them. And so we're literally living in a world now where corrupt, 2 times ethics breaching, civil rights violating Justin Trudeau, who has been lying to us for a month. We know it. We've seen it. When his media, which has been lying to us for a month, we know it. We've seen it. They're coming out now and saying Putin is evil. And if you don't take a stand against Putin and support Ukraine, you're evil. The people who I know have been lying to me are now telling me what to think. I'm going to be suspicious. It's not to say that I trust anything that comes out of Putin's mouth any more than I trust anything that comes out of Trudeau's mouth. I don't trust anything anymore. I don't trust anything or anyone anymore, period. Tyler Durden is a stupid name. No, sir, it is not. Remember 3 weeks ago when honks were terrorism and everyone was an expert in virology? Strange. This week, everyone has a doctorate in geopolitics with a minor in Russian history. I wonder what I will be expert in next. Well, I'll say one. First of all, thank you very much for the super chat. I'll tell you one thing. This has been, people should look at these situations and look at them as an opportunity to learn about something that I guarantee you 99% of the world did not know about. Every time there's a flare up in the Middle East between Israel and Palestine, I'm amazed at how many people lack basic understanding, basic history of the situation. And it's not taking sides one way or the other, but that's one of the ones where, like, you take whatever, you take a neutral side, you're the enemy. And you take a side of either of the two sides, you're the enemy to the other side. But I mean, people think, and I've had private DMs with people, Putin's a madman. That's all you need to know. Who's telling me that now? The same politicians and the same media that have been lying to me for the last however long are now telling me that's all you need to know. I'm skeptical. And it's just been a very, very good excuse to learn or refresh my memory. I have a minor in Eastern European history, but it was pre-World War II, so it didn't, I mean, we didn't go to all out for violence. We just want to live in a world that makes a bit of sense, hold their feet to the fire to give back what we had, value truth and love in a world gone mad. Thank you very much, RVDL. But what's going on with this? I'm just going to pull up some gems. First of all, Zelensky is, being idolized by the media while Putin is being demonized. Now, I'm just going to go out and say, I suspect they both have very serious problems. Ukraine is a known issue of egregious corruption, criminality, and one of their exports, you might want to look it up. You'll be quite shocked as to what it is. And I mean illegal exports. It's trafficking. So, Ukraine has been it's a fundamentally problematic country, but not any more so or less so than other countries in Eastern Europe or in the world. But the media coming out now and just saying Zelensky good, Putin bad, and then you dare just ask why? I mean, I'm noticing these bot accounts on my Twitter feed, created in February, 0 followers, 0 following, posting stuff on Russia, Ukraine. And maybe they are people who have hitherto not created accounts, but they felt compelled to because of the situation. Maybe, but it looks it looks fishy. It looks weird. Everything about this is weird. And then you get these stories, the ghost of Kiev, this Ukrainian firefighter pilot downing Russian jets, and then the footage that they had been using to promote this amazing story of resilience, triumph of good over evil is from a video game. And then you have the stories of resilience of those 13 soldiers on Snake Island. I mean, I got to look up what Snake Island is because I only know of the story where Zelensky comes out and said that these Ukrainian soldiers were killed by Russian soldiers in their last act of defiance. They told Mother Russia to go F itself. This is Zelensky who says this. And now it turns out that the 13 soldiers are in fact alive. Apparently they've been taken prisoner. So there was in fact a confrontation, but there's fog of war. And then there's everybody is either getting caught sharing fake information or is deliberately promoting misinformation to have a literal battle of fake news, misinformation on social media. The island story triggered my spidey sense. All of these stories should be everything. A step away from Ukraine, everything should be triggering spidey senses. Everything should be triggering spidey senses at this point in time, because everything is, Trump removed the blood of Martin Luther King from the White House. No. The PP on the hooker sheets in Moscow. No. Reports, anonymous reports. I mean, everything should be raising spidey senses. And the one that caught my attention, when the Ukrainian politician gets up before the EU with a screenshot of a broken cell phone of a Russian soldier who's now dead, texting his mother, and it's like the Minority Report orgy of evidence. This Russian soldier saying, "We were tricked into fighting in the Ukraine. We're bombing everything, even civilians. They told us they would be lining the streets with flowers, and they hate us. I don't know what's going on, Mom. I don't want to be here." And he's dead, and they happen to get his cell phone, and it's a cracked screen with the text, and they read it before the UN. It's an orgy of evidence. And like Colin Farrell said in the movie, you know how often you get orgy of evidence? Never in his career. Sorry, he said, in my career, you know how often I've gotten an orgy of evidence? Never. The Snake Island, it's like all of these things. Of Kiev, and then you have people saying, like, people need inspiration. Don't shoot. Don't raise the truth bell on some of these suspicious sounding stories. People need inspiration. FDA information dropped today as per federal judge ruling. Oh, I'm sure Barnes and I will be talking about that later. Wag the Dog. I got to watch that movie again. And then you got people. One of my heroes, Tom DeLonge, Angels and Airwaves, Blink-182, formerly of Blink-182. I love his music. I love his lyrics. One of his lyrics in his new song is, effectively, I'm going to mangle it. It's on the new Angels and Airwaves album. But basically, everyone's a Yahtzee. Like everyone's an extremist. And now he's just gone full blown tweets, retweeting everything, retweeting my man Zelensky, like these images of Zelensky, which people are saying he's arming citizens. I'll stay here until the end. And then these images are several years old. These images of Ukrainian models picking up arms to fight the Russians. Old pictures, airsoft gun, it's just bizarre. It's just bizarre. And the amount of new accounts coming out to push this information on social media, it's very bizarre. So it's amazing. I don't want war in Ukraine. Putin's actions are criminal. But to have the binary of West good, Putin bad is the thinking of a child. Viva Frei. I agree with you. My bottom line is, this is a regional conflict. This is a regional conflict that has a complex history. And okay, so right now one might say, and I could concede, that Russia is the aggressor at this stage of the conflict. Just try to analogize it in my mind to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict in terms of the complexity, in terms of the passions on both sides. But this is a regional conflict. And the media trying to blow it up into a full-blown World War III. I mean, I have my thoughts as to why the media has gone, full overboard on this. And I part of me thinks it's to distract from what's going on at home. Canada has very good reason to now make this as big of a crisis as possible, even if it means exacerbating the regional conflict, to distract from the last month of Justin Trudeau's desecration of our Constitution, desecration of our financial institutions, the trust people have in them. It's a great distraction. It's not like Joe Biden could use the distraction as well. But this dichotomy, good versus evil, first of all government are fundamentally corrupt. And, Ukraine, we were talking about the corruption in the Ukraine when it was politically convenient to talk about it. When Joe Biden was talking about how he bribed Ukraine officials to fire a prosecutor who was looking into Burisma, threatening to withhold $1 billion in aid. We were talking about the corruption then when Putin wasn't in the picture, and everyone agreed. Very serious corruption problems going on in Ukraine. All of a sudden, that's all. Forget that. Forget Fox News talking about that. Forget Republicans talking about that. Now, it's like, If Putin attempts to circumvent the sanctions using cryptocurrency, would the US and the West be justified in stepping in to regulate limit? I couldn't answer that question, but I don't think that's the more likely alternative. I think the more likely alternative is that you're going to create alliances between big powers who might create a parallel economy. And this might, a parallel economy or potentially a larger economy that's going to actually devalue the US dollar because the US is going to potentially lose influence if the forcing of allies between what appear NATO countries and other relatively big countries that have big exports, Saudi Arabia, China, Russia, some South American countries. That's great. I mean, you might be shooting yourself in the foot by actually strengthening foreign currency. I was born in France, now living in Ontario, Canada. My father's family escaped Spain during World War II. Mom's side barely survived it. It is a huge trigger. So let me see what I had up there, because I just had some examples of just how outrageous what's going on is. This is an interesting one. Now let me just make sure that I'm so neurotic. I do it every time, even though I know the layout is fine. There's no audio here, people, so I'll be able to do this one. Now I'm going to minimize and go back to my window here. Fox News prints shocking headline based on an unsourced report. This blows my mind. The headline was, Russia sends 400 mercenaries into Kiev to assassinate Zelensky. Report. How many reports did we see about Donald Trump that were all bunk? The SHIT whole countries, the PP scandal, the Martin Luther King bust being removed from the White House. What were the other ones? I mean, I can't even think of all reports, anonymous sources. But listen to this report, which refers to an article in the Times, which is based on what the Times has learned. You won't believe what these. I went to read the article, and then when I go back to the tweet, I noticed that the hyperlink that Fox News used to source their regurgitation of the Times story was no longer there. And why did Fox News remove the hyperlink from the article? Are we going to see that here? The Kremlin has sent more than 400 Russian-paid mercenaries into Kiev with the mission to assassinate Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, according to a report. The Wagner Group, a Russian private military company accused of covertly working with the Russian government, flew mercenaries into Africa. From Africa to Kiev about 5 weeks ago. The Times of London reported. I went to that Times of London report. In their report, they say the Times has learned, and they just said the exact same thing verbatim. That's what the Fox News is quoting. And then 3 minutes later, they don't even link the hyperlink to the article anymore. But report, what happened? Anyone do a follow-up on this story? I didn't follow up before today's stream, but curious as to what the follow-up on that story was. And the aggregate knowledge of the internet is an amazing thing because the discussion that always follows, you'll get to the truth. You'll get to not the truth. You'll get to a more logical, potentially more tenable explanation of what's going on. Yeah, we need Ottawaks and you, Ottawa Scott, to do a live stream in Kiev. I'm also stunned by the lack of video footage. Like, no current video footage, no like real-time stuff like what we saw in Ottawa, and so much of what we're seeing recycled, old pictures or video game footage. If people are not asking themselves questions here, it's willful blindness. Let me see here. I don't want to get. Let me just see. Okay, so I don't know what this means. The Wagner Group is the same group who got whipped out by the U.S. Army in Syria a couple of years back. I don't have any knowledge of that, but I do know what the POW MIA means. You are not forgotten. That is, I saw that flag in New York State, and I had never seen the flag before. This is the avatar that I'm talking about now. Thank you very much for the comment. And oh man, Viva bad take Frei today, eh? Okay, I'm not sure. I would be interested in substantive criticism, not bad take. It doesn't mean much. Let me see this. Let's see here. Okay, and we got footage on Eastern European social media sites. Okay, thank you. I'll look. I mean, Robert Barnes shared one of the street reporters in our locals community. Viva Barnes. Hold on, let me just do this. Wait. VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com, where you can find us for some great exclusive content. It's not all behind paywalls for the paying supporters. There's a lot that's for everybody out there. Hold on, I do not that I'm. I'll tell you here. This Viva is right about everything. No bad take. I agree with you, anonymous username. I'll tell you what. I'm not taking a position here. All that I'm saying, by the way, is that the conflict in Russia is slightly more nuanced than the media was depicting it as over the last little while. And I'm just glad now. I think I have a decent understanding of the history of the conflict, of the diverging interests of the conflict, of the respective positions of the parties in the conflict. But the issue, take aside, if I had a vested interest one way or the other, if I were, I have family that was from the Ukraine, but it was Poland at the time. I posted actually a picture on my Twitter feed, a picture of our family in Lviv. Was it Lviv? I think it was Lviv. And I think it was Poland at the time. And I have family that's from Russia, but all from the Eastern European side of it. Grandmother family from Russia, grandfather's family from Ukraine, Poland. But I don't have a hard position on this. I know that I would if I were from one of the areas, and I can understand people's passion about this, and as much as I can understand the passion about the Palestinian-Israeli debate. But I'm not taking a position on this. I'm just saying people need to understand. People need to know what they're talking about before taking a position. I guarantee you, people don't even know about the Donbass region. They don't know what the historical fighting has been in that region. They don't know that the Donbass region voted for sovereignty in a referendum where the vast majority, 90%, voted for sovereignty from Ukraine. And that was recognized by Russia, but not recognized by Ukraine. Most people don't even understand the recent origins of this conflict, let alone close the door if you could, please. It's cold. Haven't been watching MSM, keeping to independent journalists, but based on what I know of Putin and paying attention to his actions since Georgia, I'd wager that this is the Russian oligarchs pressuring Putin. Slava Ukraini. I don't know what that means, and I hope I don't get in trouble for saying it, but thank you very much for the super chat. No, but you don't need to agree with someone's concerns in order to understand them. The argument is Putin sees an expansion of NATO into Ukraine as an existential threat to Russia. The argument is that Putin sees Ukraine's refusal to recognize the independence of the Donbass region. It's Donetsk and Luhansk. I mispronounced that. The argument is that Russia sees Ukraine's refusal to recognize the independence of the Donbass region as, as bad as Ukraine complaining about being part of the Soviet Union. The flip side argument is that Ukraine is an independent nation. They voted on it. They separated from the Soviet Union, or they got their independence from the Soviet Union in 91, 92. And Putin has no business exercising influence or, even worse, carrying out military operations in any part of Ukraine. That's the argument. But I guarantee you, most people retweeting and they have no idea. They think it's all cut and dried, black and white. Could not find Ukraine on a map, and even if they could not find the Donbass region on a map, and even if they could not explain the history of the conflict along that border that goes a little bit further back than 1 month. So that's it. My whole point, and this is like the learning curve. My point was not to take a position on this. It was just to understand the conflict. And I think now I've talked to people who are qualified as being Russian apologists or Putin apologists or Putin, supporters. And I've talked to others who are got full on, it's Ukraine is in the right. And I think I'm getting to my own understanding. And if you all can get to your own understanding by following this journey, it's better for everybody. Let me see what the chat says. Viva, there's a YouTuber, Baltimore, that's covering the beginning of the Ukraine and Russia. Okay. I don't know. I don't know. And if it's bad content or inappropriate content, not an endorsement. I'm just bringing up chats as I go along. Peter, any of you saying bad take, what would it take for Russia to be justified here? If the answer is it's impossible, Russia is a supervillain, maybe you need to analyze your bias. People are saying, like Russia wants to take over all of Ukraine. And they're attributing Hitlerian ambitions of global domination to Russia, when I think, it doesn't make, first of all, I think it's factually incorrect. And it's also like geographically impossible. Russia's a massive country with a ton of natural resources and a relatively modest population, 141 million. If they were trying to take over all of Ukraine, this conflict would look a lot different. But the Warhawks want it to be that. That's the one I want to bring up. The Warhawks, who are promoting this nonsense, would want nothing more than this to escalate into a broader conflict than just a regional one. Where's the Twitter? Is it this one? Oh, here we go. This is beautiful. David Mamet, every fear hides a wish. And just to satisfy my neuroses, I'm going to double check that the screen is good. It is good. I'm going to minimize. And the cowardice of people on the interwebs, man. So this person, I'll go to the original tweet. Pam Keith Esquire, listen, this is an actual tweet. If Ukraine holds, Putin will nuke them. If Ukraine falls, he'll move on to Poland. If Poland holds, Putin will nuke them. We stop him now or we surrender. Hyperbolic much? Absurd much? But there's an expression, David Mamet's, every fear hides a wish. And it's a beautiful thing, really, where it's not quite the same as confession through projection. It's actually a little bit more, deeply psychological. Every fear hides a wish, where you say like, gee, I hope that doesn't happen. Oh, no, sorry. God forbid that should happen. But part of like, but like if it does, then I can feel justified. Or if it does, then whatever. It's from Homer's Odyssey. It was a movie with William H. Macy that I watched. It was a terrible movie, but I never forgot that quote, every fear hides a wish. And I said, this tweet is the definition of David Mamet's every fear hides a wish. So many people, especially those within the military-industrial complex, want this conflict to escalate. It's good for business. With that said, this tweet is also delusional. That's all I said. She blocked me after that. I don't know why. Because hold on. So yeah, I'm in incognito, but she blocked me after that. It's like you can't even. People want to take hard positions. They want to be hyperbolic. They want to be, super inflammatory rhetorically, and then they block people who I didn't even find this to be particularly mean. And then I just said, you're missing my point, respectfully submitted, because Twitter always gets read with sass. Obviously, Poland, because someone said, yes, Poland wants to escalate it. Sure. No one in the region wants to escalate it. You know who wants to escalate it are the people who are far enough away that it won't affect them, but they get to profit off of it. And then I responded that. You're missing my point, respectfully submitted, no snark or sass. Obviously, Poland does not want to escalate it, but the Warhawks in Washington, NATO, certainly would not mind. War in Poland is far enough from them, but close enough for the military-industrial complex to benefit handsomely from. But like every fear hides a wish. By talking about it, by saying stop sharing and then close, nuke them. It's just. Yeah, the Swiss system going down. Yeah, let's see. I mean, it's. Take Russia off the international banking system, make them team up with China, as if between Russia and China, they won't have enough brain skill to come up with a solution that might make them say, yeah, we don't need the West anymore. Oh, we don't need the West. But by the way, we've got a lot of natural resources as well ourselves where we can have our own parallel economy and keep making enemies and, see where that goes. Let me see this here. If this is a distraction you're spending a lot of time on, if this is a distraction, it's a distraction. I spent a lot of time on Canada stuff. I mean, but this has been, it's just been an opportunity to learn about a conflict that I had only known about very, very scarcely until now. So that's it. What else did we have on the menu for today? It's just the photos that are fake, the videos that are fake, the recycling of images that were used way back in the day, all of the media, all of the blue checkmark crowd coming together with unanimity. It reminds me, now that I've lived through it, exactly what we saw in 2020, when the governments of the world, and someone can, I'm going to tweet this out and see if I can get the aggregate knowledge of the internet to help. All of the countries that jumped right on the COVID restrictions bandwagon, are they overlapping virtually entirely with all of the countries now that are jumping on the Russia sanctions bandwagon. I'm not asking that sarcastically, rhetorically. That was my observation, but I don't know if I'm missing some countries that support the sanctions that were not on the bandwagon for COVID or vice versa. But it's very weird. I mean, it's very weird, and you have to be suspending your own disbelief at this point in time to not find it weird and to go right back to trusting politicians and media that you know have been lying to you for the last 2 years, no less. Someone says Japan. Which side is Japan on this? Did they abstained, I believe, but Japan still wasn't big on COVID. Japan valued people's right to choose. All right, we've been doing good here. Let me see. I haven't gotten disturbed yet, but the light is fading. So Pat King, news release. Oh, this judgment. Okay, we'll end on this one. We'll end on this one because I think I'm losing light. Hold on. Let me just see before we move on. Screen sharing was canceled. Make sure you. Okay, fine. That's fine. Let me see if in the chat. Russia left communism and the left never forgave them. Russia. Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting story. FBI investigated Trump and found zilch, not a nothing. That's they found something. They found that the only party to actually have colluded with Russia for the purposes of influencing the election might have been the Democrats. Might have been everything that they accused Trump of having done, they themselves did. Okay, let me see if I got any chats before we move on to the last story of the day, which is going to be a decision coming out of Ottawa, COVID related. Yeah, look, I have my issues with Pat King, but he should be released. There's no question. And Tamara Lich, I mean, it's imagine detaining for charges of mischief. I mean, what world are we living in? The world's most corrupt countries, Ukraine ranks. Okay, Viva. World's most corrupt countries, Ukraine ranks 122, Russia 136 out of 180. Zelensky overnight becomes Cinderella, and we're asked to choose sides. No thanks. Where does Canada fit on there? I'm curious to know where Canada and the U.S. fits on there. Cankles. Okay, I thought you were talking about my crackle, but that's Cankles. I think that's a Hillary Clinton reference. Yeah, projection. Confession through projection. Okay. Here we go. This. Ontario Superior Court, mother doesn't have to get the Fauci juice for her kid against the father's wishes. Great arguments by the judge. I just want to read a few sections from this decision because I saw it on Twitter. I saw it in a screen grab. And it's not that I don't trust anybody. I don't trust anybody. So I had to pull up the decision, and it's funny. It does not read like a typical judgment. Here it is. Boom shakalaka. We all see this. I'm not even going to tell you what I'm doing, but I'm doing it anyhow. I just told you what I'm doing. Just making sure the screen is fine. All right. So not getting into it. Bottom line, family law dispute, all disgusting, soul-crushing, stomach-churning garbage of law. I don't say garbage of law in terms of, it's the most soul-crushing and devastating practice of law. And in family law, they take lawfare to the next level, and they take COVID lawfare to the next level. We've seen a bunch of these decisions. What's up? Do I like that? What is it? Let me see it around. Turn around. India Pale Ale? No, thank you.
Oh, I wanted to make a beer commercial.
No. Okay. Pale Ale. Okay, so this is, I'm just going to read the first few paragraphs. The judge, her name is A. Pazarats. When did it become illegal to ask questions, especially in the courtroom? And when did it become unfashionable for judges to receive answers, especially when children's lives are at stake? How did we lower our guard and let the words, quote, unacceptable beliefs, end quote, get paired together? In a democracy on the scales of justice, this is an obvious jab at Justin Trudeau. But the world in which we live now is the obvious result when you have leaders, when you have people like Justin Trudeau in positions of power. Should judges sit back as the concept of, quote, judicial notice gets hijacked from a rule of evidence to a substitute for evidence? I mean, I love this because we've been talking about this for a while. These judges, we've read the decisions coming out of New York, Chicago, where they're denying visitation rights. They're depriving parents of custody for refusal to get the Fauci juice. And they are citing as judicial notice evidence which is highly disputable or disputed in the first place, but they cite it as judicial notice. I don't want to get into it now, but we've talked about it. Everyone knows that V's are good, and everyone knows this. Everyone knows that Omicron is everyone knows this, and therefore a father not getting vaccinated is sufficient grounds to deny him visitation of his own kids. Everyone knows it. Judicial notice. This is paragraph 5, and is misinformation even a real word? Or has it become a crass, self-serving tool to preempt scrutiny and discredit your opponent? My goodness, I could have written this, but I would never ascend to the position of a judge at this point in my life. I think I've probably upset too many people in politics. Nor would I would not want to have to be a judge, sitting here listening to these cases of parents fighting over their kids and invoking the Fauci juice as a weapon of lawfare to deprive one parent of decision-making rights with respect to the kids. To delegitimize questions and strategically avoid giving answers. Blanket denials are almost never acceptable in our adversarial system. Each party always has the onus to prove their case, and yet, quote, misinformation has crept into the courtroom lexicon. A childish but sinister way of saying, you're so wrong, I don't even have to explain why you're wrong. This is amazing. Actually, I'm reading a lot of this for the first time. What does any of this have to do with the court order? Sadly, these days, it has everything to do with family court. Because when a society demonizes and punishes anyone who disagrees or even dares to ask a really important question, the resulting polarization, disrespect, and simmering anger can have devastating consequences for the mothers, fathers, and children I deal with on a daily basis. This is a judge who is having the network moment. This judge is mad as hell and is not going to take it anymore. This is a judge who sees this. I mean, we talk about it. We go over cases from time to time, and it irks me and it turns my stomach. This judge is now sitting in a courtroom. Family law is dirty lawfare to begin with, but the weapon of war in family lawfare has now become COVID issue, and this judge has just had enough by the sounds of it. It's becoming harder for family court judges to turn enemies into friends when governments are so recklessly turning friends into enemies. My goodness, this is poetry. It's becoming harder for family court judges to turn enemies into friends when governments are so recklessly turning friends into enemies. The motion before me is typical and frightening example of how far we are drifting from cherished values. You can read that. I'll leave it up for 30 seconds. But the rest of it doesn't even matter. Just a good ruling and a judge saying it like it is, using, I want to say the judge is a woman, but I don't know. Mr. Justice Apat. Hold on. Is this judge's first name actually Justice? Or is it Justice? Because of the Honorable Mr. Okay, I don't know if the title is Justice of a judge. Beautiful. I'll actually link this. I'll link this in the pinned comments so you can read it on your own. Beautiful. Is there a link to it? Oh, here, I can actually just share the link right now. Boom. That should be in there. Yep. So that was just a beautiful decision. I'm scrolling down the chat. So that's just a beautiful decision. I mean, I guess we want to end this on a white pill moment. We'll see. First of all, great avatar. We'll see. Sadly, this judge's decision will probably be overturned. It did not read like a typical judgment, but it read like poetry. It read like, I'm going to talk directly to Justin Trudeau and other divisive like politicians. Jagmeet Singh, looking your way here. Did a good job following Convoy in Ottawa, Viva. So go to Ukraine and let us see what's really going on. Just saying is all. I'm reading this with humor and good nature and not as calling me a hypocrite for not going to Ukraine. Dude, first of all, I said it from the beginning. I'm not a journalist, but I'm also travel is not realistic for me. But Sean Penn is there. Sean Penn's on the ground doing it. So that is it. Look, we'll end it on that white pill moment, and I'm just going to see if on Rumbles, if I missed any super chats, Rumble rants. I did. I see one here. Rumble rant from Ropes Guy says only one reason to support Ukraine. If Putin loses here or struggles greatly, China will be much less likely to invade Taiwan. retired analyst here. I've heard that theory as well. If Putin succeeds with Crimea, not Crimea, sorry, if Putin succeeds with the Donbass region, China will feel empowered in Taiwan. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Someone said, don't kid yourself. You're a journalist down here. I'm not. I'm an analyst. I just want to understand the world. And maybe that's what journalism is all about. Cassidy, the carpenter, says, the people want footage. Let me go on your behalf to Ukraine. Second time offering. Well, dude, contact Rebel News. I have no doubt Rebel News would. I mean, they would pay you. They would. I have no doubt. Contact Rebel News, Cassidy. I just, threshold for danger is one thing. I don't travel for fun. My wife her friend had a destination wedding in Mexico. I'm so neurotic, I didn't go. Okay. That's how neurotic I am. So, I'm not going to war zones on purpose. If, Ottawa was never a war zone, but so that's it. Yeah, here we got the joke. Okay, people. So that's it. We'll do this again tomorrow night. We do have a sidebar. I just don't know who it's with. Let me just see. I think Barnes might have texted me. We have one confirmed for tomorrow. It is Jenin Jones. Okay, good. Jenin Jones on for tomorrow night's sidebar. Wednesday night. Where can we see the trucker injunction? Okay, I'm going to try it. Let me screenshot to remind me. I want to try to put the trucker injunction link in the pinned comment as well. So we'll have two decisions. So sidebar tomorrow night. And we'll see what the news brings to us. And we'll see what my constant search to understand. If it yields anything good, we'll go live again tomorrow. But definitely sidebar tomorrow night. Thursday, we'll do this again. Everybody, thank you all. As always, share some links around. I'm going to post the clips to Viva Clips if you want to go and subscribe there if you're not already. But that's the latest in the world. And I hope people understand it better so they can engage in meaningful discourse with people without being blocked on Twitter. I can't believe blue check marks who should have thicker skin the second they're confronted block on Twitter. Come on. I don't even block the people who I know are only there to get negative rises out of me or the people on my Twitter feed. People have the right to speak, and blocking, I have a disagreement. I appreciate why sometimes blocking can be appropriate, but I just don't do it. But my goodness. The Duran on Rumble. I have very, very bad internet where I am, so I'll try to get those up. I know I didn't put Mark... I forgot his last name now. Musa. There's a few things I need to upload to Rumble. So that's it, people. Enjoy Echo Chamber. Echo Chamber dislike echoes. I'm glad that we have a pretty good mix of people here on this issue. I'm very surprised on the Ukraine-Russia issue, seeing the people who are just forgetting how we have been lied to by media and the politicians, and now because it fits what they think they understand of global history and global politics, right on board. All right, people. With that said, thank you very much. Thank you for the super chats. I will see you tomorrow, if no later.